This manhwa begins with a brief narration by the protagonist, in which he claims to have entered a novel and turned into a tiger. After that, we are shown two men observing the corpse of a dog that has been killed by a simple swipe during the night. The men, disturbed, believe that the culprit is not a normal animal. Furthermore, the rest of them cannot seem to find any traces of the creature, and it doesn't even appear to have fallen into the trap they had set, assuming it's an intelligent animal. One of the men suggests descending from the mountain. However, another disagrees with this proposal and begins to reflect on the situation. In his view, if they descend from the mountain, they will fall into the animal's trap. Nevertheless, it's also not certain if they should stay there. Finally, after careful consideration, he proposes that they descend from the mountain. The man orders them to leave the trap as it is and not to descend as a group until they have reached the valley. While he continues explaining, suddenly one of his companions is crushed by a huge tiger and later dragged away, ending his life. The dark-haired youth prepares to attack. However, due to the complication caused by his trembling hands, he moves slower than usual. Meanwhile, another man is attacked by the tiger. This man, on his knees, looking in fear at the creature, says, before meeting his end, that it is probably the owner of the mountain, Sang-gun. After this, we are shown a village in broad daylight, with two men talking. Apparently, it's the day when a sacrifice will be offered to Sang-gun. The sacrifice will be the slave of the Baekjaya family, a young woman with blue hair and light eyes. Once night falls, we see a young girl who is told to get on a palanquin, which is carried to a part of the mountain. As soon as they leave it in place, the men carrying it rush away from the site. The young girl exits the palanquin and tries to maintain her composure. It appears she is going to meet Sang-gun. As she advances in the darkness, she starts to feel scared until she can no longer move forward. A loud voice asks the girl who she is. Upon hearing it, she begins to tremble and falls to the ground due to her inability to stand. Once again, the voice asks her who she is, and after this, the girl introduces herself as Choa, Sang-gun's wife. The tiger, who asked the question, stares at her, and she comments, now standing, that her older sister told her that he was sick. However, she, as his wife, will be patient and finally asks him to take care of her. The beast, furious, shouts at the girl to leave, and after this reaction, Choa begins to cry. The tiger, in response to her tears, asks her why she is crying and, getting more tears as an answer, pleads with her to stop crying. However, the girl continues, and the animal becomes distressed. It appears he hates the sound of people crying. The animal asks the girl again, now more relaxed, why she started crying. Choa replies that the reason is because he got angry with her. The tiger sighs and wipes her tears, then asks her to spend the night there as it's already quite late. The girl, happy with this proposal, sneezes on the animal's paw, covering it in mucus. Morning has come, and Choa is sleeping on the creature's back. The tiger, now awake, begins to think about how the girl is sleeping so peacefully and about the color of her hair. Having hair the color of snow is not that common after all. This hair color belongs to the white blood ghost, a woman who used blood curses and, in the end, was cursed herself. Sang-gun is surprised that a fragile girl inherited his blood. It seems that this blood is an elixir that all beasts desire. The tiger thinks that this is why it's difficult to control his anger. Therefore, it's not safe for the girl to stay close to him. A few seconds after reflecting on this, Choa wakes up and starts talking enthusiastically about their first night together. Sang-gun remains indifferent and asks her to leave, as it's already morning. The girl responds that she can't go back home because someone told her they would beat her if she did. The tiger asks her who threatened her, and the girl says it was someone named Baek. Upon this response, Sang-gun is surprised and, after thinking, realizes that the girl is a sacrifice. She pleads with him not to abandon her, explaining that she can be useful. The tiger is aware that he can't take her back to the village she comes from, as it wouldn't be safe. So, he decides to take her to a different one and gives her herbs to sell and make money. Afterward, the tiger guides the girl to a mountain and gives her some roots to sell. However, she explains that she doesn't need them and only wants her husband. This last comment particularly annoys Sang-gun, who tells her sternly that he is not her husband but the ruthless ruler of Baeksan. She refers to him as her husband again and mentions that she doesn't know how to get down the mountain or back to the village on her own. Finally, Sang-gun decides to take her there. Choa climbs onto his back rather clumsily and seems especially excited. They both head towards the village. Upon arriving at their destination, the tiger asks the girl to stop pulling on his ears. She decides to hug him in response and later gets off the animal. Sang-gun, who intends to leave, is stopped by the girl, who firmly grabs his tail, demanding that he doesn't abandon her. She tells him that after spending a night together, he can't leave her. However, the tiger continues to disagree with her and tells her not to talk about things she doesn't understand. However, Choa insists that she is his wife and throws the roots to the ground, shouting that she doesn't need anything except to be with him. Faced with this attitude, the tiger makes a decision and tells the girl to go and sell the roots, as that way she can get married. The young girl, excited upon hearing those words, decides to go sell them and asks Sangun to wait for her. Choa, who locates a seller, shows him the root to sell. The man, surprised by what he's receiving, which seems to have great value, considers the possibility of deceiving the girl. However, he doesn't feel capable of doing so and tells her that he doesn't have enough money to pay her what it's really worth. He asks her to go elsewhere to sell it and say that she was sent by the pharmacist Choi Chil-sam. Meanwhile, we see Sangun enjoying a piece of meat. For a moment, a thought crosses his mind, wondering if Choa will be able to find her way back to him. The tiger quickly dismisses that fleeting idea, but other thoughts come in its place. Thoughts that tell Sangun that perhaps the girl could be in danger for carrying such a valuable product as ginseng. Now, the story returns to Choa. She offers the ginseng to Digum, and after carefully examining it, he asks her if she's a slave. Surprised, the girl confirms it. Digum, annoyed, understands that if she's alive after being offered as a sacrifice, it's because she escaped. Furthermore, he accuses her of stealing the roots. She quickly denies it, telling him that her husband gave them to her. This comment angers Digum even more, and he instructs one of his men to take the ginseng away and kick the girl out. She refuses to hand it over because Sangun gave it to her. After an unsuccessful struggle that leads nowhere, the girl is beaten, and they finally take away the roots. She, now expelled from the house, wanders wounded and dejected. When she sees that Sangun is not where they last met, she begins to search for him. In the attempt, some silhouettes call her, trying to get the girl closer to them. However, the tiger appears quickly before the creatures can do anything to Choa. Furious, he asks them who they think they are for staring at her. The tiger tries to ask the girl who did this to her. However, before he can finish, she looks at him and starts crying. Digum pays his man for a job well done. The man, thinking about what to do with the money, sees the door beginning to crack until it is destroyed. He yells to know who is responsible for the damage, and others join him ready to retaliate. However, Choa appears, and the angry man threatens to beat her to death. Upon hearing this comment, Sangun appears, and the others remain terrified. Digum, who peeks out to hear the commotion, asks them to stop making noise. However, he finds the beast he sent one of his men after. It asks if they are responsible for harming the girl. Sangun, furious, tells them they will pay for hurting Choa. But before he can do anything, the girl steps between him and one of Digum's men. She explains to the tiger that she doesn't want him to become a murderer and just wants the roots back. He agrees to her request and has them give back the ginseng. Digum hands it over, and the animal asks him to also give food to the girl. He agrees, and Sangun leaves. Digum remains on the ground, surprised, because the girl's husband is the mountain deity. Therefore, he assumes that the girl must be a deity as well. Back in his cave, the tiger wonders how his cozy home and peaceful life have come to an end, referring to Choa's presence. The animal decides to go out to drink, and the girl accompanies him. After a long walk, they arrive at a beautiful lake. A golden fish greets Sangun, and they start to have a small friendly conversation. The tiger asks the fish for help in finding something, and the fish tries to tease him by asking if it's something he's trying to give to the girl. The tiger, annoyed, tells it to stop talking nonsense, and the fish takes a wooden box out of its mouth. After that, Sangun tells the girl to open it, and when she does, she finds a beautiful hairpin. The tiger explains that this accessory, called damajam, was made from a 1,000-year-old peach tree and has the power to ward off evil spirits. He asks the girl to wear it always. The girl, excited and with tears in her eyes, tells the tiger that it's the first time she has received a gift and embraces the hairpin, cherishing it. Choa is sleeping on the tiger, with one hand on his back and the other holding the hairpin. The animal moves, causing the girl to fall, and tells her to get ready because they have a long journey ahead. While she packs some things, the tiger looks at her and has another conversation in his mind. The voice asks Sangun if he really needs to get rid of her, suggesting that maybe her destiny is to be a sanbai and questioning if he's afraid of being in a relationship again. The tiger explains that humans have their own destiny, something quite different for him. Furthermore, he tells the voice that dealing with her is enough trouble. After this comment, they start having a minor argument, which annoys Sangun. The girl interrupts their internal conversation, telling the beast that she has finished packing her things, and they start their journey. A black tiger with yellow eyes and a scar on its face walks behind a woman. Seeing that Sangun's house is empty, it's surprised and asks the woman if she didn't tell him they were going to visit him. The woman explains that of course she did, and that could explain his absence. According to her, Sangun probably doesn't want to confront the black tiger. The proud animal starts laughing, thinking that the other one fled from him out of fear. The woman asks if he wants to go back, but he replies that he will stay there because Sangun will have to show up at some point. In the middle of the mountain, a boy and an old man come across Sangun. The boy is scared to have seen a tiger, and the old man, making the boy stay behind him, looks defiantly at the animal. However, when they see Choa on the tiger, they are surprised. She greets them, and the boy responds more relaxed. He and the old man decide to stay and watch. When night falls, Sangun hunts a deer for the children and the old man. The old man, who has seen Choa talking to the boy, asks her what they have been talking about. She replies that the boy is her age, and they've decided to become friends. The boy's name is Baichunk. The girl's stomach growls, and after this, she tries to suggest that the sound came from Sangun. The tiger vehemently denies it and tells her that the sound came from her stomach. She continues to deny it, and Sangun insists that it was her. Finally, the young girl, annoyed, walks away. The tiger doesn't understand her reaction, and the voice in his head begins to laugh at the situation, asking Sangun how he can't understand a lady's heart and wondering if he won't follow her. The tiger is calm because the accessory he gave her will protect her. The voice continues to argue with the tiger, and he asks why it's so concerned about the girl. She says it's because her owner isn't being honest with his feelings. The old man approaches the tiger, telling him he's a beast that eats humans because he has noticed there is a changui with him. It appears this man is a Gonryon, sensitive to the presence of ghosts. The tiger asks the human soul, the voice with whom he had conversed earlier, to appear so she can confront the old man, and a young woman appears. The old man asks her what she has around her neck, and she explains they are gourds, starting a fight soon after. The woman, who is agile in combat, puts the old man at a disadvantage. He's surprised, thinking she's too powerful and doesn't understand how she could really be a changui. We return to Choa, who is sitting on a rock eating some meat. Sangun has gone to find her and asks her to come back to the fire. However, the girl ignores him. Faced with this attitude, the tiger shows indifference and decides to return on his own, leaving the girl behind. But the young girl follows him, asking him to come back together. Sangun, satisfied, thinks his plan has worked. On the way, the tiger suddenly stops, sensing a presence, and demands that it manifests itself. A voice asks him to hand over the girl, and he won't get hurt. The beast believes it's a lesser form or a spirit and eventually agrees to hand the girl over in exchange for not harming him. Upon hearing this, the girl looks at him confused and apologizes for her previous behavior. However, the tiger tells her to be silent and explains that he won't die for her. Although they have formed a bond, it's not so close that he would sacrifice himself. Meanwhile, the battle continues and the man is cornered by the soul. She tells the old man that they don't intend to harm the girl, and he responds that he has no choice but to believe her. She replies, after sheathed her sword, that there is nothing more foolish than not recognizing fate. The old man starts talking to the girl about the rumor that brought her to the mountain. However, their conversation is interrupted by a kind of green mist coming from the other side. A creature resembling a man appears, smiling, and says that he doesn't think he has the late white blood ghost in front of him. He reaches out a hand to Choa and asks her to come closer. She remains motionless. The story gives us a glimpse of Choa's past, in which she is being bullied by some children who make fun of her hair color. Both children and adults mistreat her, calling her a monster, saying she brings bad luck. She was alone in the snow when a man picked her up. She wasn't particularly well treated in that house. The young girl, who had overheard conversations mentioning words like love, family, marriage, and husband, acquired a taste for these things. Choa would look at the sky, asking the moon and the stars if she would ever find someone who would fight for her and care for her, a husband. However, a woman in the house explained to the girl that she would marry a tiger, and the bride of a tiger never knows when or how she will be devoured. Upon hearing this comment, Choa concluded that the reason she was given a home was to use her, assuming that she was just a ghost disguised as a human. Back to the present moment, the creature is in front of Choa in a rather unpleasant room. He tells her that her blood and flesh will become part of his body, and unlike the tiger, he will never abandon her. Thus, he asks her not to be miserable and to live in paradise while holding a knife to her head. With the knife just centimeters from her throat, the girl thinks she doesn't regret meeting Sangun. She thinks about the time they spent together, the gift he gave her, and the moment he defended her. As she recalls all of this, a desolate scream is heard from the creature, and when Choa opens her eyes, she sees the tiger with an arm in his mouth. The young woman's soul, who stands next to the girl, asks her if she's okay. Choa, confused, asks who she is, and the soul introduces herself. She explains to the girl that Sangun actually cares a lot about her. At first, Choa questions it. However, the woman asks the girl to see how he's fighting against a more powerful enemy for her. The girl, upon seeing the tiger, remembers her wish, the one where she hoped for someone to care and fight for her. Upon this revelation, she begins to cry. Choa, amidst tears, tells the woman that she hadn't realized and that she will listen to her from now on. She suggests returning home. The absence of the girl makes Sangun feel more comfortable in the fight, and he quickly deals with the creature, causing its body to explode. However, it hasn't been defeated, as it regenerates into a different form. The tiger discovers that it's a blood-casting mouse. The creature tells him that he won't be able to escape while creating more mice with blood. Sangun tries to destroy them, but more keep being created, eventually immobilizing him. The mouse kicks the tiger into a pool of blood, and he manages to splash it. The creature, surprised, says that it's still resisting his attacks, but he will cut it in two. But before he can attack, the Changui appears from behind and manages to cut its neck. While the creature remains surprised, Sangun deals a final blow powerful enough to finish it off. The rat's body is incinerated by blue flames. The tiger walks with the soul. Sighing, he says that he came close to dying. She tells him that despite everything, they managed to get the sword and some eyes that will help him in the future. Sangun asks her where Choa is, and she says that she asked the old man to accompany her to the Hwijeng village. She explains that if he had been defeated, she would have lost her power too. The woman asks him to go back to the girl. Sangun stops to reflect and comes to the conclusion that all of this began to happen after he left Beekson. Therefore, similar events will continue to occur in the future. He thinks that he won't be able to protect Choa with his current strength. The gifts he obtained after defeating the rat contain the perfection of hidden arts. Therefore, he thinks that if he could take on a human form, he would have more power, as well as the blue flame that hasn't fully absorbed yet. The evil phoenix fire. However, before all that, he decides that he has to do something more important, transform into a human. Choa, who is with the old man and the boy, asks them where they are heading, as she thinks it's more convenient to wait for Sangun. The old man explains that there's a small village behind the mountain, and they can wait for him there. The boy tells Choa that she can't marry a tiger. In response to this comment, Choa, annoyed, tells him not to tell her what she can or cannot do. During the journey, a man walking alongside some wagons stops when he recognizes the old man and decides to repay a past favor, to accompany them on their journey. The story now shows some boar-like beasts talking to another they call the old man. He tells them that humans are becoming stronger, and therefore they must do something about it. The old man, who would like to return to peace with Mother Nature, pities the rest of his people. She makes them want to keep living and guide them on the right path. Sangun goes to see the old man. He says it's been 30 years since the last time, and the old man asks the tiger what he wants. The animal explains that he has come to seek the primary lotus root. The boar tells him he will do him that favor in exchange for another favor. Sangun agrees and asks what it is. The boar explains that he must follow his son Yuzi and help him. The soul is not very convinced of Sangun's choice. However, he tells her it's the only option he has, and besides, he has already obtained what he wanted. During the journey, they spot sword masters. The tiger, surprised, asks if the goal is to steal the wagon they are escorting. He comments that it's a stupid idea. The boar tells Sangun that, as they had explained before, they are prepared to sacrifice their lives. Apparently, the goal is to obtain the Dubong pill they are transporting. The tiger startles, as this is a pill capable of instantly increasing one's level. Faced with this idea, he decides he doesn't want to get involved. However, the boar tells him he has already received his father's reward. Still, Sangun protests, as he doesn't want to risk his life for something like that. However, the animal tells him there's no turning back. The purpose of the old man assigning this task to the tiger is to see if he's capable of carrying out a mission, and handling the responsibility and consequences of his victory or defeat. Because when humans attack spiritual beasts, they won't stop until they get their revenge. It seems it's not just the sword masters, but also the Taoists who intend to invade the mountain. If this were to happen, his clan would perish. But Sangun's arrival has been an advantage. We return to the rest of the beasts, who, shouting Sangun's name, rush toward the men at full speed. The swordsmen try to protect the merchant. When they locate the tiger, they shout that he's the one leading the horde, suspecting he's the so-called Sangun the other beasts are referring to. Thus, they decide to focus their attention on him and end his life. Finally, he understands that he has fallen into the old man's trap, becoming the target of the sword masters. By using Sengun as a scapegoat, the old man's son thinks that finally, the hatred they have for their clan will be redirected, and they will remain safe. The swordsmen, who have already finished off a few beasts, realize that the battle is not over as many are still alive. The soul, who is with Sengun, asks him if he's been deceived by an old man and what he will do about it. He decides to confront them and asks the young woman to be careful as they are experts. Inside the wagon, the man, who hears a lot of commotion, decides to come out. With him are Choa, Baicheng, and their master. Upon coming out, the others tell him that he doesn't have to participate in the battle. However, once he is aware of the situation, he decides to take action. Through a talisman, wooden stakes come out of his hand. However, Sengun, the target, manages to dodge them. The man, impressed that he was able to dodge the attack, takes out more talismans and uses the same attack again. But the tiger once again manages to emerge unscathed, which angers the man trying to finish him off. This time, he uses a more powerful attack, an attack that Sengun seems unable to evade. However, using the sinister blue phoenix flame, he manages to destroy the stakes that were about to engulf him. Both the sword masters and the beasts are surprised by Sengun's attack. He, still standing with a few stakes embedded in his back, glares at the rest angrily. The man is astonished to see that Sengun survived after he used all his energy against him. Moreover, someone informs him that the pill has been stolen. As he tries to respond, he starts coughing up blood from his mouth and nose. While trying to recover, he thinks that if he doesn't have the pill, he'll be expelled from the faction. So, he orders his men to pursue the fugitive. Choa, who is leaning out of the wagon, overhears the conversation and becomes worried upon learning that Sengun is injured. The tiger, accompanied by the soul, is having a brief conversation with her. She expresses her concern for the state of his body, and shortly after, Sengun collapses to the ground, coughing up blood. The woman, worried, tells him that they need to remove the stakes or he won't survive. As she removes one, she notices that roots were coming out, and the tiger insists on removing them all. She explains that he's bleeding too much and it could be dangerous. Nevertheless, Sengun responds that at this rate, the roots growing inside him will eventually absorb all his blood, so removing them is the best option. The Changwi is not entirely convinced, but due to the tiger's insistence, she decides to obey. Meanwhile, the men tasked by Dosian to find the tiger find a drop of blood that gives them a clue. One of them asks the other to be careful, but the other, who appears quite confident, responds that Sengun is probably in a state of limbo. He also points out that the treasure carried by the Changwi seemed uncommon. The woman, who has finished removing all the stakes, gazes at Sengun, who has fainted. She thinks he has lost too much blood and should be more careful. The soul quickly turns around, encountering the two men who are searching for Sengun to kill him. The Changwi draws her sword and begins to fight them. On the other hand, Dosian, who has regained much of his energy after the fight with the tiger, goes in search of the Changwi, as the treasure she carries has piqued his interest. The presence of a mystical tiger and a soul with a treasure seems like a kind of blessing to him. Finally, he manages to locate Sengun's body lying on the ground. Baicheng can't find Choa, so he informs his master. He explains that he thought she had gone to the mountain to urinate, but she hasn't returned. The old man, worried, says that there are still beasts out there. Meanwhile, Choa is searching for Sengun. Dosian stands before the tiger's body, staring at it intently. He thinks the stakes have ended his life, and while he finds it normal that he died from that, he also finds it boring. He concludes that if the owner of the Changwi no longer exists, he can look for her. However, after looking around, he finds nothing. Due to this, he thinks that his men have probably stolen the treasure he was looking for. Angered by the idea that his belongings were touched, he cuts off the tiger's head in a fit of rage. So, annoyed because someone took what belonged to him, he goes to find the one who has stolen what is rightfully his. Choa, who has found where Sengun was, comes across the head of the beast. With a completely expressionless face, she holds it in her arms. The girl's impassive face quickly changes to a smile. Looking at the head, she asks if he's trying to play a prank on her, commenting that she won't fall for it. Choa approaches the tiger and places the head next to the body where it should have been initially. She asks him to stop joking and get up. However, when she releases her pressure, the head rolls off again. Choa remains serious for a moment before asking him to stop. So, once again, the girl picks up the head and places it back in its place, telling him that he has played enough pranks. She repeats for him to get up. but once more the head rolls off. Finally, the girl breaks into tears. After this painful scene, we are shown the Changui carrying Sangun's body. However, it accidentally slips from her grip, causing the tiger to open his eyes instantly and ask in alarm when he passed out. The woman tells him that he woke up, and Sangun responds that she was responsible for it. When he looks at her more closely, he sees a kind of black and pink flame enveloping her, which alarms the tiger. Following this, we see the scene in which the Changui was fighting the men chasing her. They, surprised by the woman's abilities, changed their target. They thought that if they ended the tiger's life, they would also end hers. So, they threw kunais towards Sangun's unconscious body. However, the woman stood in front to protect him, receiving the attack in her place. The woman began to create an illusion. One of the men, intrigued by what she was doing, lunged at her with the intention of harming her. But the sword he carried exploded in his hand, injuring him considerably. Kneeling, holding his trembling hands, the Changui approached him. She told him he could do what he needed to do, as defeating him wouldn't be enough. The man begged her to spare him, explaining that he was only following orders. The woman, imposing, asked him if he wanted her to spare him at that moment. He replied that he would do whatever it took if she let him live. So, she asked him if he could act, receiving an affirmative answer from him. The Changui asked him to examine the fusion technique that was imprinted on a rock and ordered him to hurry, explaining that he would have to eat the prepared ingredients. Nowadays, Sangun understands that the woman turned that man into him and tells the soul that she is overstepping once again. She comments that his bleeding needs to stop once and for all, so she hands him the treasure she had hanging from her neck until now. She explains that what remains is used to absorb energy into her own. Thus, she tells him that it's all she could do so far and that she has had fun with him. In response, Sangun explains that all she needs is to rest for a while, asking her not to talk as if they won't see each other again. The woman, joining her head with the tiger's, tells him that she won't be able to rest well when she thinks she's leaving him alone, asking him a favor while she's not present. A few seconds later, the woman disappears, and Sangun, now alone, asks her to come back quickly and says he'll be waiting. The beasts began to inform the old man about the situation. Upon learning that Sangun managed to steal the pill and escape, he admits that he underestimated him. He thinks that if he recovers from his injuries and enters a state of inner peace, he will probably return for revenge. So, he orders his men to search for them because their efforts cannot have been in vain. He tries to encourage them, saying that even though he is strong, his injuries will put him at a disadvantage. He insists they must find and eliminate him, or they will become his victims. We return to Sangun, this time with the treasure hanging from his neck. He goes to the lake and asks the distinguished golden fish to appear. Upon seeing the tiger's condition, the fish becomes concerned. However, Sangun tells him he'll explain later and adds that they have to leave right away. The fish accepts the governor of the mountain's request, as he calls him. However, he asks if he will also take the little boy beside him. Thus, a boy appears in the way a flower would bloom and points to the fish, telling Sangun to leave it there. This causes him and the fish to engage in a trivial argument. The black tiger hears a noise and immediately runs out, claiming it's Sangun. However, when he finds him, he sees his damaged state. The tiger, going from surprise to anger in seconds, asks who did that to him. Sangun, indifferent, continues walking. The black beast asks where he's going, and the tiger tells him he's busy right now, so he'll play with him later. He explains that if he wants to fight someone, there will be people going to Bixen soon, like Dosian or a pack. In response to that comment, the animal asks if he has fought against Dosian, and the Changui accompanying him adds that it's admirable that he survived after fighting with him. She asks Sangun to listen to her before he leaves. She tells him that he is being pursued by enemies, and his body is not in condition, so she suggests he accompany her master, referring to the black tiger. The woman adds that the tiger wants to fight Sangun when he's in a condition to do so, and there's no way to guarantee his safety while he finds a place to protect himself. She concludes that it's a good time for them to lend him a hand. However, Sangun immediately rejects the offer because he doesn't trust him. In response, the woman pulls a double-sided plate from her sleeve. It's a hidden treasure that can take revenge on spirits. She engraves her name and that of her master on the plate and offers it to Sangun. Surprised that she can engrave her own name without going crazy, he tells her that giving him that means putting their lives in his hands. But both she and the tiger agree that Sangun wouldn't be able to threaten them with their lives. So, Sangun refuses the treasure but accepts their company. Days later, Sangun and the tiger are lying down. The former looks surprised that they don't appear tired after walking for so long. Sangun talks to Hong Yon, the Changui of the Black Tiger, asking her to teach him how to hide his energy. In response to this request, she asks what she'll receive in return. The tiger tells her what he wants, and she mentions that she doesn't need much. While she pets her master, Sangun, who knows that Changui can choose their masters to serve them for the rest of their lives, wonders why she chose someone as foolish as the black tiger. His reflection is interrupted by the woman, who asks if he has the Dubong pill with him. Sangun's reaction to this question serves as an answer to Hong Yon. She tells him that if he gives it to her, she will, in turn, give him the Fen Shui's technique book. She explains that it's difficult to learn. Sangun understands that it's a technique to divide inner levels. The inner realm of spiritual beasts is divided into 6 stages, but with the book, he can gain more power than usual while remaining at the same level. Changui explains that she hasn't been able to learn it, and he tells her that giving away the book will be a loss for him. She replies that it's fine but mentions that if he wants the book, he'll have to treat his master better. So, they strike a deal. Shortly after, Sangun wakes up the tiger and tells him it's time to leave. The tiger asks Hong Yon why she's not joining them, and she replies that she'll do so later. After the 2 tigers leave, the Changui is surrounded by a pack of beasts, just as she predicted. The black tiger asks Sangun if what he just took is the Dubong pill, receiving an affirmative answer from the other. He asks why he gave away something so valuable, and Sangun responds that he gained a lot from Hong Yon. Both of them reach their destination, and Sangun places a paw on the trunk of a tree, causing yellow leaves to fall from it. It's the ginkgo tree. Suddenly, stairs appear under the black tiger's feet, and Sangun explains that he discovered Dai Bong and that this way he can practice without any interruptions until he has absorbed the energy of the pill. Hong Yon stands in front of the ginkgo tree, which now has no leaves. The beasts reproach her for how long they have to keep waiting and ask her to tell them how to open the door to Dai Bong. A few seconds later, the door breaks, and from it emerges a human silhouette, Sangun. He, now a man with red eyes and dark hair, moves swiftly, thrusting a sword into a beast, and is surprised by the agility he has gained by taking on human form. The sword, which is embedded in the animal, takes on a reddish appearance and begins to absorb blood. The rest of the beasts, alarmed, wonder what to do about it. They assume that Sangun has taken the pill and don't know if they will be able to defeat him. However, one intervenes to encourage the others, explaining that he is one compared to all of them, and ultimately, they are also spiritual beasts. After these words, the others, more motivated, hurry towards the boy. Sangun, who is not intimidated at all, thinks they are doing exactly what he wants. He raises the sword and thrusts it into the ground, creating a kind of black mist. The beasts start to panic because they can no longer see and don't know where the others are. One of them asks the others to gather from where her voice comes from and starts to hear one of their kind asking for help. Her eyes meet those of another boar, whose eyes are bleeding, and shortly after, he is caught by black claws with eyes. Finally, this beast is also swallowed by the mist. The boy realizes that the Bobi sword, instead of absorbing blood as he thought until recently, actually absorbs the spiritual beasts themselves. He thinks that if he had let his guard down, he would probably have been absorbed too. Hong Yon, who was a spectator, congratulates Sangun on his progress and asks him how he took on human form. He replies that it's more convenient. However, she, looking more serious, asks if it's because of someone named Sanbai. He doesn't answer, and she asks him to give her a Jun H1 reverse. Sangun gives it to her and tells her he has to leave, saying goodbye to her and asking her to take care, as he doesn't know when they will meet again. The Changui, who stays watching him leave, says that they will definitely meet again, and she will be waiting for that moment. A red-haired boy, looking at the horizon, approaches an old man and tells him that all the problems happening are because of someone who wounded Nakbong. He asks the old man if he's in Sangun's hideout, and he confirms it. Another boy clarifies that there is nothing inside the cave and speculates that he may have left Beekson Mountain upon hearing they were coming. However, they are still able to determine his location by putting one of his hairs on a pendulum. Although apparently, this pendulum won't work for 2 days if used twice. The pendulum points southeast, and Sangun is 3 days away from where they are. The red-haired boy asks them to hurry so they can finish the task and return home as soon as possible. A quite angry rabbit scolds a girl for taking what he calls his grass. The girl, who had heard that Sangun was a huge tiger, thinks it's a lie. The girl feels threatened by the rabbit's claws, as she thinks it will be very painful if she scratches her. The animal, quite proud, is caught by the ears by Sangun. The rabbit, annoyed, threatens to harm him, saying he is the ruler of Beekson Mountain. Sangun, visibly annoyed, stares at him with features similar to those of a tiger. This makes the rabbit frightened, and he instantly recognizes him. Sangun tells the girl that she is free to pick whatever grass she wants because the governor of Beekson Mountain won't be angry about something like that. The human, still holding the rabbit by the ears, asks him if he has seen some men who were looking for him. The rabbit quickly replies that yes, 3 days ago, and they headed southeast. With this information, Sangun deduces that these men probably have the tracking treasure with them, the pendulum. He thinks he won't be able to escape from them no matter where he goes, so he considers going to Yudun Mountain to deal with them. Regardless of whether they are swordsmen or Taoists, the most important thing is the positions of the latter, and he also knows the type of technique they use. An idea quickly comes to him. Sangun looks firmly at the rabbit and tells him that if he does what he asks, he will let him go. So, this rabbit starts talking to other animals to spread the rumor that Taoists have captured the ruler of the mountain, and they are heading to Yudun Mountain. The information quickly reaches the ears of the beasts of that mountain, and, angry, they wonder why they didn't finish off Sangun. The leader suspects that Sangun told those who captured them that the Dubong pill is there to get rid of them. The other beasts start to be alarmed by this assumption. However, the leader quickly explains that this is their territory, and they must use the topography of the place they know so well to confront them. So, they start preparing for battle. The men who are after Sangun continue their search. The man carrying the pendulum explains that he is probably in Yudun Mountain. Therefore, they hurry there. Sangun, who is waiting for everything to begin, thinks that he will return to Yudun, the leader of the beasts, everything he did to him. The men who have arrived at Yudun Mountain have been unable to find Sangun. The red-haired man, from a distance, sees a young boy and calls out to him to ask. They begin to describe a tiger, explaining that's why they are on the mountain. The young boy tells them that now that he thinks about it, he believes he saw a tiger and will guide them to it as it's in the center of the mountain. During the journey, Sangun tells them that despite the density of the forest, if they stop to look closely, there are paths where the beasts walk. Therefore, if they follow these paths, they will reach the place where he found the tiger. Sangun analyzes them. He thinks that even though their level is high, the difference in numbers is considerable. Besides, the prospect of watching the fight between them and the beasts seems fun to him. The protagonist asks if they know anything about Yudun Mountain. They respond not much, so he explains that it's called Yudun because it became the place where humans and spirits who blame themselves for being weak gathered and practiced. He adds that nowadays, it is said that the spirits of boars have inherited it, so finding animal fur is common. So, a boar passed by the area, taking down one of the men. The red-haired man, seeing that it's an ambush, decides to respond. His body catches fire, and he strikes the boar, burning it. The man who was in danger thanks the red-haired man, a pyong. Other beasts hidden among some bushes see that the situation is going as their leader planned. When they propose to go to the next location, Sangun appears from behind, causing the boars to be scared and come out of the bushes. Upon emerging, they are defeated by the man carrying the pendulum, Myung, who is alerted by others that they were unable to find the young boy they spoke to earlier. Again, other beasts are watching the situation, and Sangun once again scares them to come out of their hiding. The leader, surprised by his men's strange behavior, decides to take care of it himself. When he arrives on the battlefield, he is amazed at the small number of men who have sabotaged his plans and asks one of his men to call the others. Meanwhile, Sangun is watching the situation, wondering what decision Yudun will make. Yudun, rushing to the men, asks them to gather the rest of their servants to win the battle. But Pyong, who suspects he's the leader due to his size, decides to maximize his spiritual power and, raising his hands to the sky, creates a firebird that is launched directly at the leader. Yudun thinks he's being underestimated and manages to make his way through the flames, reaching the red-haired man, who is surprised that he was able to dodge that attack. However, Myung is able to put up a barrier between them. The impact injures the boar. On the other hand, the dark-haired man asks Pyong to restore his spiritual power. So, Sangun finally intervenes, as he doesn't find it fun for the fight to continue in the state it's in. With others unable to keep up with his speed, Sangun takes the defensive treasure from Myung by tearing off his arm. The red-haired man gets alarmed, and Yudun discovers that it's Sangun. He quickly envelops them all in blue flames. Both men and beasts scream in pain, and Pyong thinks he needs to inform the other Taoists of this disaster. However, Sangun pierces him completely with his sword, ending his life. Shortly after, he stands in front of Yudun, who understands that they have all fallen into his trap. Sangun asks him if he has any last words. The old man tells him he has a request. However, before he can finish, he is cut down by the boy's sword, who thinks it's a nuisance for him to express a will. In the Beak village, Sangun is examining various objects. He also takes out some envelopes that seem important. However, his observation is interrupted by the appearance of the little girl from earlier. She tells him that thanks to him, her chickens have grown healthy, allowing her to sell eggs and study. She, who is studying writing, offers to read the letters he has in his hand. So, she begins to read. The small factional strife in Yasu has not abated and has escalated into an uncontrollable fire, and the Red Sea has declared war on Yasu. She continues to read that the movements of the 3 demon kings are extraordinary, and that the Taoists must prepare. The girl finishes reading, and Sangun asks her what she wants in return. Looking at her, he sees Choa reflected in her, but he quickly regains his composure and gives the girl a reward, asking her to open it only when she's with her parents. Later, the protagonist is reflecting. The Red Sea is a year away from the west, so he believes it's only a matter of time before war reaches Bixen. The boy, opening the Daibong door, goes down the stairs, thinking that when the war between humans and beasts begins, evil will run rampant. Therefore, to face that situation, he needs more power. Sangun stands in front of the Phoenix Spirit Beast, which has been sealed on Bixen Mountain until now. At first, he couldn't get close to it. However, now that he can maintain a good distance from the creature, he believes he can absorb it without much trouble. The Phoenix spits blue flames at him, causing him to burn. He thinks that despite achieving the state he's in, he could barely withstand that attack and wonders if he can endure it when he absorbs it. The creature, this time, envelops Sangun in flames. He, in pain, thinks he can't miss the opportunity he has, being willing to die trying. So, he extends his hand to begin absorbing the Phoenix, doing it completely. The protagonist, who thinks he has emerged victorious, begins to feel the Phoenix's resistance. However, he manages to endure it, telling it to feel free to go out of control inside him as much as it wants. After all, he will make sure it fits perfectly with him. After 4 years, the flames of the Phoenix have been extinguished hundreds and thousands of times by the protagonist. He has managed to control the toxins, and inner peace is now attainable. Furthermore, he has acquired the malevolent Phoenix fire as his own and also gained telekinesis. The protagonist has many things to do in the future, but he's not exactly sure where to start. So, finally, he decides to begin by going after a girl, and as he departs, we can see that Sangun's shadow resembles that of a huge phoenix. Sangun arrives at a small village, asking about Yon to various people. He receives information that she is part of the Yonga family, which has been enslaved and scattered. The protagonist asks why they are now slaves, and a man explains that it was due to an event that happened a long time ago. Apparently, one day they obtained wealth, so they and their daughter went to Xiaodang. However, the aristocrats told them that they didn't like being with commoners and complained about their source of wealth. So, they were accused of theft, and only the girl named Yon was left as a slave in the white paper house. Additionally, the man explains that the girl is quite beautiful, so it wouldn't be surprising if they try to make her a concubine. Others who are listening to the conversation add that the last time they saw her, she had a good nose, and her skin was as white as a flower. Apparently, only the young master of the Beek Jinya house can have her. Sangun, visibly upset after hearing this story, asks them, seriously, where the white paper house is located. On the other hand, we are shown a young woman being made up, and she is asked if she knows how many women envy her. She is a young woman with an impassive face, long black hair, perfectly made up, and dressed. While the girl is outside at night, looking towards the horizon, Sangun appears and finds her. She recognizes him instantly, referring to him as Confucius. She remembers him easily because he helped her in the past 4 years ago, and he explains that he has come to her to learn writing. She smiles at him and tells him that she will teach him, although she doesn't have much time to do it. Sitting on a rock, the girl begins to explain some things to Sangun. However, she remains silent for a few seconds and quickly closes the book, saying that the lesson is over. She tells him that it was fun reading with him and that it reminded her of when she was fired in the past for being a woman. However, she never gave up, and she explains that thanks to him, she was able to gather courage. Sangun doesn't understand this last part, and she tells him that she has to ask him a favor. A man who seems to have had a few drinks enters the house stumbling. When he opens the door, he is greeted by the young woman, who is sitting at the back of the room. He, with wide open eyes, asks her if she has been waiting for him for a long time. He explains that he has brought drinks to heighten their excitement and, approaching her, tells her that she looks even more beautiful when she dresses that way. Extending his hands toward her, he tells her that he will make her feel good as long as she remains silent and obeys him. The girl, who had not said anything until now and had maintained a firm stance, draws a knife and cuts him, shouting at him to take his dirty hands off her. She manages to give him a small cut on the cheek. The girl continues to shout at him. For her, it's better to die under her own will than to live as a body for the rest of her life. The man, angry, smashes a jug of alcohol on the girl's head, causing her considerable pain. He begins to shout at her, asking how she dares to touch him, explaining that he was trying to make her happy because she's a beautiful woman, and starts wishing for her death. So, he approaches the woman, who is cornered and injured, and tells her that she's tough since she hasn't screamed even once. He expresses that he doesn't mind her being in that state either. Someone grabs the man by the neck before he can do anything. Sangun throws him back and speaks to the woman. He explains that he was worried that she might have taken an extreme option due to her discouragement about being saved by him. However, the protagonist, looking at her with admiration, tells her that she's stronger than he thought. The man, who still hasn't given up, appears particularly upset, wondering what's going on. And when he sees Sangun, he recognizes him. The protagonist, giving him his back, turns around, giving him one of his most threatening looks. And that's how the first part of this manhwa ends. If you have reached this part of the video, let me tell you that you have been one of the few people to make it here. So comment the word tiger in the comments. Remember to subscribe to not miss any videos. With that said, see you in the next video.